It is that time of the week where I bring to you the Week 9 Power Rankings. We will talk about the teams that are rising and the teams that are falling in our league. This week, much like any other week in our fantasy football league of guys that go for twos, was a crazy one. A lot of predictions of Cubbies and other people's as well were proved to be wrong. It was a crazy week in the NFL and a crazy week in fantasy football. I want to get to our first team because we have a change right away at the top of our rankings. I bring Tyler and Miles Colin to the top of the list with a strong 6-2 record. Again, Tyler and Miles dropped a great point total with 143 points against a solid Jake Kerr team. Jake Kerr's team did not perform this week, but even that 143 points is something that you just cannot beat. Tyler and Miles are looking strong as they most likely locked up a place in the playoffs with a 6-2 record. They need 7 wins for sure to make the playoffs. 6 wins is just about that teetering point. A team or two will probably make it with 6 wins, but 7 is where you want to sit. Our next place team is Ryan Naughton. While he has scored the most points still in the league after a dismal showing of 92.6 points. That was the worst week Ryan Naughton has put up, and it brings him down to a 5-3 record. Ryan, yes, he does only need 1 to 2 more wins to make the playoffs, and he has beat some good teams this year. He's beat Tyler and Miles twice. But the problem is the 3 losses for Ryan are against teams that have not made the playoffs yet, who are still pushing for that playoffs. So if he does have a tiebreaker in there, that's the only time that Ryan Naughton may feel a little bit of pressure. I still think his team is good. I'm also questioning, though, the whole Saquon Barkley. The Giants recently traded away their best defensive line player. They also traded away their best corner, which means teams are going to be scoring a lot of points against a bad Giants defense. When they scored a lot of points, it doesn't make them want to run it a lot with Saquon Barkley. I think Saquon Barkley's on the downfall for the second half of the season, which means 15 points. It doesn't mean he's dropping below 15, but still 15 points from his average 20 points is going to hurt Ryan Naughton's team. I could see this team slipping a little bit before the playoffs. I still think it'll make the playoffs. Our next place team is Kevin Davis. Yes, it is me at a 4-4 record. I did put up an L this week. Drew Michaels' team snuck one out on me. I dropped a solid point of 115 points. I had three, count them, 3 running backs on my bench that went off. I got Kenyon Drake. I have a good-looking now Aaron Jones. And I also have Christian McCaffrey. I had a little roster mishap. But with Christian McCaffrey playing the Ravens, Kenyon Drake being very inconsistent, and Aaron Jones still not going off, I think he will continue to go off and produce that point total. I think I am on the up slope for the next coming weeks. I think my team is a force going forward. I think there's a lot of depth at wide receiver and running back. So for right now, I'm going to leave me right there at that position. Our next place team is Drew Michael, the team that beat me this week. He has a 6-2 record. He and Tyler are looking like the 2 teams to lock up those first 2 playoff spots. A 6-2 record, though, for Drew, I have him this low, is because his team still does not look that good. There's some questions at the running back position. He still has a very questionable Le'Veon Bell on his bench. He doesn't seem to know what kind of to do with him. A 6-2 record is very strong. He is moving up in our power rankings. His team isn't nearly as bad as we once thought it was. He dropped 127 points this last week. Antonio Brown and Stephon Diggs I don't think will have 22-point weeks in the future, but I think Kerryon Johnson and TJ Yeldon will be solid, both running back 2s as the season progresses. Our next place team, and this is a team that I have moving up quite a bit in this week's power rankings, is Ross Davis. I cut him short a little bit last week and he was pissed off, so I'm moving him up this week. He has a 4-4 record. He is tied with me at the 4-4 record, and he is moving up in our power rankings. He dropped 123 points this week, which is a strong showing from Ross's team. There isn't many question marks with Ross's team. He has a strong running back in Mack at Indianapolis. David Johnson, yeah, he's not what he was thought out to be, but dropping 10 to 15 points each week isn't awful. He may have a question mark at quarterback now that Jameis Winston is benched, but DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Green, and Julio Jones is not bad at all at wide receiver. This team has depth. The only question marks are probably at tight end and quarterback, but those are easily positions to find at the waiver wire, or other people have a plethora of them on other rosters. So I like this team going forward. Our next place team is Cubby at a 5-3 record. Yes, Cubby did put up a win this week with 120 points. That's also a solid point total. But honestly, Cubby threw up shit on his roster and just prayed that it would stick. Good for him. He did stick. A good week from his shit lineup. Going forward, though, his shit lineup is just not going to cut it. Mike Evans is not going to drop 30 points. Alvin Kamara has been proven inconsistent, dropping 23 points. I don't see that coming alive much sooner. The other points on his team is Grant, Kittle, Ivory. I mean, just his roster has a lot of holes with the injuries that he has. Leonard Fournette and Dalvin Cook still show no signs of returning anytime soon. He is hoping that Cooper Kupp and Matt Ryan come back. Matt Ryan's guaranteed to come back. Sorry, he was just on bye. But he's hoping Cooper Kupp comes back from injury soon to help this team rise. If Cooper Kupp does come back and is a force, I could see Cubby's team rising in the near future. But for right now, I have him sitting here. I just don't think his roster is that great. Our next place team is Josh Kerr. I have this team rising. I lowballed this team last week. He is at 4-4 record, and simply he had 2 awful weeks strung together. And then this week he goes and drops 129 points to beat Ryan Smith, who put up 116, a solid week. 129 points from Josh's team. Will Fuller, though, let's talk about that. Dropped 20 points this last week. Helped his team get the W, but is now out for season. That is a huge loss for Josh's team. I move him up in this power ranking just because I simply think he's better than the teams below him at the moment. But I am worried for Josh's team going forward. But 129 points is not too shabby at all. Our next place team is Jake Kerr. I have this team moving down, and it's simply because he is at a 3-5 record. A 3-5 record is definitely what I would call the danger zone at this point. Jake Kerr's team only dropped 104 points this week, which is on the lower end of the league. Tyreek Hill got a little banged up. He might not play next week. I'm worried about that. I also am worried. Joe Mixon, I believe, let's see, I think he's on his bye week this next week, so that's going to hurt Jake. I just think this team moving forward really needs wins at a 3-5 record, but I don't think it's going to get those wins. It's got a tough schedule coming up. Jake Kerr's team is not looking good. This could be the first time Jake misses the playoffs in league history. Our next place team is Matt Davis. Matt Davis, we knew this team was in trouble. He only put up 93 points this week. He is at a 3-5 record. This team is not looking great. T.Y. Hilton, awful performance this week. And from his running back, Hines, also an awful performance with the emergence of Mack. This team is definitely trending downwards. The only thing that's trending upwards is Marvin Jones had a killer week. And honestly, the Lions are in trouble as a team, so they're going to keep on chucking the ball to Jones. I really like that player. Hopefully Jimmy Graham sticks it up next week and Matt can squeak out a win. But 3-5 record, roster doesn't look too great. That's the reason that I'm leaving him at the 9th position. And then the last place position we all know is Ryan Smith, an 0-8 record. But shout out to Ryan Smith. He put up the highest point total this season for his team. He put up 116 points. He has put up over 100 twice already this season, but he still has not gotten a win. He is confirmed for the Sacco Bowl bottom 4 teams. He is confirmed to be competing in that. 0-8 does make it official. All right, our 5 takeaways from week 8, a crazy week 8, and going into week 9. Number 1, Cubby and Drew break their losing streaks. Cubby was on a 3-game losing streak, and Drew was on a 2-game losing streak. Good for these guys because they really needed a win this week. Drew basically locked up a playoff spot. Cubby now puts the pressure on the rest of the league to get wins at a 5-3 record and moves up to actually number 3 in our standings. Big wins for both of these teams this last week. Cubby has a hard schedule ahead of him. I believe he plays Tyler once, and he plays a good Ross team twice. So Cubby is in trouble. He really needed a win this week before he hits that hard stretch of the schedule. Number 2, Drew, Tyler, and Smith. These are 3 teams that I think have locked up their position in where they're heading for the postseason. Drew and Tyler, I believe, have locked up a postseason berth this week. They will for sure confirm that with a win next week, but I think 6-2 records are a great place to start. And Ryan Smith with the 0-8 record confirmed that he will be battling for the Sacco. Number 3, Mr. Inconsistent is back. You all know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Josh Kerr. I talked about it in the standings of the power rankings. He simply is a man that I cannot predict what will happen with his team. One week he's scoring 90, the next week he's scoring 130. Mr. Inconsistent is back. Tiebreakers, number 4, is just something that I want to talk about here. Tiebreakers are very interesting in this close-knit league that we have. As we are a few weeks from the playoffs, the tiebreakers are really going to come into play. I want to talk about a few important ones that really stick out to me. I think myself, is in a really good spot with these tiebreakers. All of my wins have come against teams that have not yet made a playoff spot. I have only lost to Drew twice, Tyler once, and then I believe I've lost to Cubby. Cubby is my other loss, which Cubby is sitting 5-3, so he might lock up a playoff spot next week. I like my chances. The only team that I may have lost to that may be in the playoffs is Cubby. Besides that, I have beaten every other team. And then other tiebreakers that I want to talk about is it seems like Jake is actually in the worst spot. That's why I am questioning if he will make the playoffs. He has a 3-5 record, so technically right now he would not make the playoffs. He also has a worse situation at the moment for tiebreakers. Cubby has beaten Jake. I have beaten Jake. Ross has also beaten Jake. Ross also only plays Jake once. I have to play Jake again. And I think that's it for who's beaten Jake so far in the playoff race, but that is not a good position that Jake wants to be in. And then it looks like Josh is also in a bad situation. Ross has beaten Josh, Ryan has beaten Josh, and I played Josh this week when he has a lot of players on bye. Oh, and Jake has beaten Josh. Josh and Jake look to be the worst in the tiebreaker situations. So I think Josh and Jake have the most desperate situation to probably crank out some wins here at the end of the season. You guys should definitely take a look at the tiebreakers and where you stand in those situations. I also want to point out this one. It was in my notes. I have beaten Ross twice this season, which means I would automatically, if me and Ross have the same record at the end of the season, I would sneak into the playoffs over him. So that is a big tiebreaker. Another point that I want to highlight is Matt Davis plays Jake Kerr week 10. This is the only time they meet this season, so that could determine a potential tiebreaker scenario for the playoffs if Matt Davis wants to sneak in. He needs to circle this one, week 10, Matt versus Jake. Also, Ross versus Cubby, the first of 2 matchups in the last 3 weeks between Ross and Cubby. This is a huge game, and it will be a huge game on week 13. These are big games to determine the tiebreakers. The tiebreaker situation, look into it, know who you have to beat, know who you have already beat or who you have already lost to, so you can kind of place yourself on odds to make the playoffs. Cubby hopefully will make his video on the playoff scenarios as we get closer into things. And then the last point is Jake Kerr now has league manager powers on the ESPN app. If I am not available for trades to go through, life is getting kind of busier as we are all graduated here and got real big boy jobs. I have given Jake powers to send trades through. Jake can also automatically veto trades. He can do all that good stuff. He can actually post to the league message board if he has anything to say to you. He'll probably say you guys all suck balls. But so Jake does have those powers now. I just want to throw that out there. He's kind of like the co-CEO or whatever you want to put it of the league when it's run in season. I just need help because sometimes I'm not always available to send those trades through, especially on Thursday nights. It gets hard when you guys send a bunch of trades through an hour before game time. So if you need anything, contact me or you can contact Jake now. That's all I have for this week. Thanks for listening.